keep going and
I think
maybe it'll
it's
come back to me.
like one of the big hallmarks, I would say, with our generation, at least in my mind, I might be wrong about this, is just like we are just so much more radically self-aware of privilege, of oppression, of like the larger world beyond like our neighborhood or what we see on like Fox News or on CNN, you know. I mean, we live in bubbles on Facebook, but at the same time, we still have way more opportunity to correct the fucked up things that we've learned growing up.
Yes, and here was what I was going to say. I think that, you know, you see the backlash against, you know, rewriting history or reparations or giving Native Americans back their land, or like, you know, what the British colonizing everybody, and at one point wasn't every part of this world is partially colonized by war and bloodshed and force, you know, most of the world, right? So, but like I also think for me, and I try to talk to this about some of my friends, like, isn't it like a very humbling experience to acknowledge how flawed and terrible that was? And you can say like, at least like I'm white, right? Okay, so my ancestors were wrong in the way things did, and like we have this chance to correct it and have these conversations instead of like totally sweeping it under the bus and being like that was the past. Like imagine like living in that type of like forgiveness, like by acknowledging it.
Yeah, but
like,
a lot of people don't like saying sorry
as a society. Yeah, I know.
Such a hard thing to get some people to say sorry, especially if they don't feel like they personally did something. It's really hard to get people to own up to like personal failings that might not necessarily have been their personal failings.
Yes, and I agree. I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, I can see it, right? Because there is social media and now everybody has the same opinions as me, but like you walk, like all you have to do is listen to like be around people of color whose lives are like completely different place because of the fact that like there are like my friend's significant other like had to teach his son not to put his hand in his pockets, like walking around, the streets of certain parts of New York, because like if you pull them out too quickly, like you could get shot. Like the fact that that is a story means that like we have to fix it, and we are partially responsible for the system, like no matter who we are, and like it's okay to acknowledge that and like try to do better. And it's funny, I also think, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, like we used to grow up, I mean, many people believe like politics is something for the home, politics causes problems within the family, not mine per se, but like we still have this world where like don't talk about politics because it might impact your work or you getting a job, politics or religion, right? And I'm like, maybe if I'm in crypto now, like I am like, and I do not like, sorry, I am saddened by girlfriends who say they still won't post about things going on because of the way they're perceived, like the peacekeeping they need to do of their image, the ability that they can't have a different opinion so everybody likes them, so they're likable, is like just like you haven't done the work. And so like I will post everything, and I am like so over like politics, like it is so like by not talking about politics, you're letting people have so much say and like your every part of your life, like your taxes, your well-being, like, all of this is politics. Like all of this is shaped by politics. So like politics is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like working on a global currency is politics. Like
I mean,
like,
I think
really,
that
it
comes down to like buzzwords, and when you're trying when it sounds like you're trying to it sounds like you're trying to start a fight when you mention Republicans, Democrats. It's just like how it is. And then you mentioned the word taxes. Everybody's like, oh, we are now on a battleground. We are fighting now, or something.
Sure. And that's where I don't necessarily approach it as that, but it's about humans, and humans are harmed, and I'll always be on the side of making this world better for humans. And I live in New York City, and you see destitute humans every single day, and I will never not be on the side of humans.
Which is interesting.
So I think that's what
most Republicans and Democrats will agree on like at least 60 to 70% of policy. When you're talking about just like how to solve an issue, like most people will agree on common sense gun reform, on stop sending money to Saudi Arabia, on stop starting endless wars, on like we should have healthcare. Most people agree with that, and it's just when you get into like the larger political discussion of like who has power, that's definitely when it gets much more contentious. It's the same thing with like religion. Most people will agree that like, you know, it's understandable why we shouldn't kill each other. We have like a general sense of morality, why you shouldn't steal, why you should respect life. But then you get into like the nitty gritty of like the Christian heaven and Christian like the commandments versus the pillars of Islam versus like the sutras. Like when you get into too much, we own this terminology and we own this conversation, then like I think that's when people start having a lot more of these like bumping elbows moments.
Yeah, and that's where nuance and systems thinking and realizing what is tied to what is important. Ashoka and actually Gabe is also, I think, very good at like not taking things at face values or like blanket statements and words and like things like that. Like they can say, you know, like Biden's not necessarily any better right now than like past leaders, right?
Not
and
at all.
like we can understand that, and the nuances of all of this is important. And I think that's like one reason I really do like the Mochi community is like so many perspectives and so many thoughtful perspectives are brought into my life. And I think and then it boils down to like people are nuanced, like, right, we're all nuanced, and the nitty gritty is the tough stuff. And that's why we have to be careful with the big stuff. And actually I was having this moment because of the art museum. Like, okay, so Donald Trump says crazy things, gets censored, and then crypto's like, let's not censor anybody, and you're like, censored. Yeah, okay, so exactly. So here we might agree on this. Like, Donald Trump will never be censored because he's a billionaire. Billionaires aren't censorable in a lot of ways. Artists are censorable. Like, if we start censoring somewhere, and I'm not saying all censorship is wrong, like I'm not the expert, but like, who's going to get harmed? We don't think about the artists who are making a political statement with their painting on like the financial crisis of 2008. So every time we want to jump on a buzzword bandwagon of something we might think is good because it's so easy to capitalize on the moment of Donald Trump saying these like neurotic things, like we are playing, and like, are we playing into their hands? Like, do they want the arts to be
in
censored?
most cases? Yeah,
you know,
we are often playing into their hands.
So right. So I think that, I mean, it all comes back to this day in the art museum. It's, you know, I think I struggle with like, okay, like when I can have and like my perspective on censorship is probably like more privileged than others, right? Like, I'm like, you know, maybe we don't censor, I'm not the expert. Like I'm saying, I'm not saying we shouldn't censor Donald Trump, but like I'm starting to think we shouldn't, because it can harm, it's actually going to just open the doorway to harm the people, to harm the type of critique that we need in this world. But at the same time, when like something like that is happening, I'm not a person of color, and I'm not somebody who's greatly harmed by the crazy shit Donald Trump does. So then I also see a reason that we need to protect people, right? So it's just like this super gray, super nuanced, like super systems mind needed to understand like how all this works. But I like, it's all these different things are starting to click for me that might have not been in the moment, because like the world was so crazy staring at screen for 12 months, and now this man is like harming, it like actively harms people with his words.
I think the big thing to me is like understanding what censorship is, because like a lot of what's been happening with like right-wing pundits, Trump, a lot of like politicians who supported Trump, they're not being censored, they're being deplatformed, which is a completely different thing, because they're not being forced to stop talking. They're just saying you can't talk on you can't use our microphone, which is perfectly legal. That's what the whole market thing is supposed to be about. Like, I'm not a big fan of like unregulated market forces, but at the same time, like that's how free speech works. Like, we have the right to give you the microphone, but we also have the right to say, no, you can't use our microphone.
Yes, exactly. So I actually totally agree that like a platform has rules, and I actually think it's really important for platforms to understand how to moderate.
Yeah, it's upsetting when they don't follow the same
rules
for different levels of people. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Right. And what's silly is like people thinking, yeah, I agree. I remember people being like, it's like Donald Trump is actually censored. Like, absolutely not. And like, oh my gosh, like people are like, like white, sorry, white, really rich men in VC, like Paul Graham's afraid of like being canceled. Like, stop it. Like, that's your
Yeah.
biggest fear. Like, wow, oh my gosh, let me play my tiny violin for you. Like, absolutely not. And like, it's funny because like I never worry about being canceled. Like, like publicly, like be a good person. Like, I don't know. And like, you're not like if you're a super wealthy, rich white man, you're never actually getting censored or actually being canceled. Like when Donald, all the stuff happened with Donald Trump and Twitter, he actually always had like the White House
Yeah.
microphone, right? So I totally agree with you. And so I think in that sense, like platforms do have a right to have rules. And I do think you can go find another platform. I do see the risk of things being moved to the edges. Like I understand all the problems, but yeah, I'm totally with you.
But it's the same thing though.
That.
It's the same thing on the other side though, with like the bakehouse that decides not to like bake a cake for a gay couple. They have the right to do that. They have the right to say no and refuse service. But then people also have the right to say, "Fuck you for not doing this. We're not going to keep you like in business because we're just not gonna support you. We're not gonna buy your shit."